Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's basically it's almost been almost 3 weeks since Donald Trump has been sworn in president of the United States, and you just heard his statements at the White House regarding tariffs um, that he says, impose on Mexico this weekend. As we are recording the show, we have no sense as to what it means, or whether it's a blanket tariff for all products coming from Mexico, Canada, and China, or is it on specific products? And we don't know either what will be the reaction of the government of Mexico as we speak. But as today's guest will tell us, everything is just a big confusion when we try to anticipate Donald Trump. Isn't that so? Ivan Zapien, very well-known political analyst, he's been joining us throughout the years. Ivan, this is very, very confusing. Do we have any sense what Donald Trump is trying to do with these tariffs?
Zero.
You're not allowed to say that. You just got to give us some inkling of hope. What our life is going to be like in the next couple of weeks. I mean, this if he imposes tariffs on Mexico, it's a huge deal. It's going to have a huge impact on all of us. Even it's going to have a huge impact on Americans.
Yeah, Ana Maria. So, I've been spending the last 2, 3, 5 days sort of thinking about this, talking to people in Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
talking to, people on the Hill, talking to people, around Washington, talking to people that are around Donald Trump. And I think the consensus by everybody is the following. I think first and foremost, it's clear that Donald Trump is trying to show up in Washington, D.C. and do as many of the things that he can do to show that he is complying with and he's making good with the promises that he made during the campaign, right? So, and the things that he can do without asking anybody for permission, just because he said so, he will do so. The other
Mhm.
thing that is clear is that he's not necessarily thinking that the way in which he's making these decisions and complying with his promises, that he's doing it in a way that those things are going to, survive judicial, legislative, or any other kind of scrutiny, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
so the goal here is not necessarily to do things right and correct and make sure that they're in a long-term policy. The goal is to get to a very in the very near future and say, I told you, I said I was going to do it, and I did it. Now, whether or not that survives, the courts, whether or
Mhm.
not that survives the stock market, whether or not that survives, in the long term, I think is irrelevant to the strategy of showing up in Washington,
Mhm.
D.C. and saying, boom, I did it.
Mhm. So, I mean, but part of the problem is, as you know, as we're doing this recording on Friday, um, the stock market is tanking in the United States. I mean, the Mexican peso is tanking. The impact, just the threat in itself, is damaging or creating a lot of increased friction with the United States, with the White House. And I guess the question is, what does he want when he says that he wants to reduce migrants and the flow of fentanyl to the United States? Because I have a sense that I'm sure those are his objectives. At least he says that those are his objectives, but I'm not too sure the Mexican government understands what that means. I mean, what steps do they have to take? I mean, they even asked him that in the press conference, and he's just, he said there's nothing they can do right now, uh, in order for me to stop from imposing these tariffs.
Yeah, Ana Maria, look, just to zoom out for a second to give you a little bit of context, right? So we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about Mexico and Canada, right? That's just one of like 15 different streams of confusion in Washington, D.C. right now, right? So,
Hmm.
he stopped funding, globally, he stopped funding for the government, he sort of, he gave 2 million federal employees an opt-out to be laid off. He's done a lot of things very quickly, consecutively, to keep everybody's heads spinning. So in that context, the question is, okay, what's exactly is the policy, goal, right? And I think in Mexico's case, it's pretty clear to me that the policy goal is that he wants to make sure that Mexico, does, cooperates in the things that he wants to do to show that he, fulfilled his campaign promise. That means reducing fentanyl, that means reducing immigration, that means, going after the cartels. Well, exactly how is Mexico going to, help them in those regards? Well, I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what that is, right? But at some point, and this is why, I think this is his MO. At some point, he will articulate what that is, and at some point he'll say that he's delivered his promise, right? So you're essentially sort of doing policy making and trying to comply with, sort of an unknown. And I think he thrives. I think the Trump,
Right.
the Trump thrives in keeping everybody guessing. And guess what we're doing, Ana Maria? We're guessing.
We're guessing.
I'm guessing that there's people in the White House who are responsible for executing this that have 10 different versions of what these tariffs look like. And I'm guessing that, that once they put out a version of what these tariffs look like, that Trump changes his mind, 3 hours later. That's what he's been doing since he got to president. He says, I'm going to do this. His administration says, yes, he is, and this is why. And then he follows up by saying, like, nope, I changed my mind.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to sit and wait and have heart attacks as we
But
as we do.
Ana Maria, I think look, I think I think the smartest thing anybody can do here is sort of pace themselves, because this is going to be the pace that we're going to be at for a long time, right? So I think we had forgotten, about
Yeah.
his style. We had forgotten about the anxiety. We had forgotten about the different the direction. And and then we also now know that there's a part of the American public that just sort of says, like, yay, this is great.
Ivan Sapien, once again, thank you so much for joining us here on Living in Mexico.
Good to talk to you, Ana Maria.
Thank you. We're going to go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Please don't go away.